The SIR forms are here, and for many citizens, so are the questions. What documents do I need? What happens if my name is not on the 2002 electoral rolls? Citizens are turning to activists, lawyers, volunteers, and even cyber centers for answers.
While reporting from Karnataka and Telangana, my colleagues and I have found that there is a lot of confusion on filling the SIR forms and why we thought this video was important.
Today, we speak to those who have been on the ground, helping people navigate the process, the doubts that they're hearing, the questions that they're coming across, and what citizens need to keep in mind while filling and submitting the enumeration forms. We have with us Lekha Adavi and Aishwarya R. from My Vote, My Right, a coalition of civil organizations who are attempting to spread awareness on the SIR process.
We also have the enumeration forms with us. The forms are divided into 3 parts and we break down what each part means, what information citizens need to provide, and the common questions that they have. So my first question is, there is the most confusion that seems to be among people is regarding the name in the second part especially. There is name and then there is relative's name. So do I fill my name and the person that I'm linking it to, or should I just directly write the person that I'm linking it to?
When we look at the mapping section, like Lekha said, left is simple because if I look at my own name, I write my own details as it appears in the 2002 list. The confusion on the ground today in Karnataka is that in the progeny mapping section, now I'll give you an example because father and this thing is very common, so I'm just going to give like my example. I map to my grandmother, right? So I write my grandmother's name, which is Shanta, under name. Then if her epic number is available, I write. In relative's name, according to the 2002 voter list, my grandmother's relative was Guru, who was her husband, who's my grandfather. The real question is, in relationship or in the Karnataka enumeration form Sambandha, should I write grandmother or should I write husband? Telangana CEO on his Facebook post has said I should write grandmother. It's the relationship between the voter and the relative. In oral communications that the CEO has had with BLOs, it is husband. But now in our work as a part of My Vote, My Right, we have interacted at least with about 35 BLOs across Karnataka, from districts also. 50% are saying grandmother, 50% are saying husband. This is exactly why we've been demanding written clarifications from the CEO. There has been no response. So as of today, half of Karnataka's forms are being filled incorrectly. What is correct, we still don't know because Telangana CEO is the only one that has given something from the official channel of communication.
I want to also ask, while we're filling the form, there's a part which asks for part number and serial number. And in the Kannada part, it says Bhaga number, which is not the part number.
No. So,
It is.
yeah, there are 3 main numbers that they ask for. One is AC, which is Assembly Constituency. In the Karnataka form, it is Vidhan Sabha Kshetra as it was in 2002 because these have changed. So the Vidhan Sabha Kshetra or AC that it came under then, and every Assembly Constituency has a number, unique number in the state. So that part, polling station, booth, all are names for the same thing. So part number is booth number is polling station number. In the part, every booth has a list. Voters list is made booth wise, which has about 1,000 to 1,500 voters. In the booth list, what is the serial number that is next to my name or the voter's name or the relative's name? That is the serial number. So these 3 numbers are important for us to locate. If anybody, like the first step honestly is to find out which booth. If you find out which booth, it's very simple to retrieve the PDF and search for your name, search for the serial number and write it.
But yeah, part is Bhaga in
Kannada.
And just to add to what she said about, identifying your part number of 2002, unfortunately on the CEO Karnataka website, if you have to look for your 2002 list, one is of course in terms of, assembly constituency, like for example, what we have as CV Raman today, CV Raman Nagar today, used to be Vartur earlier. what we have as Shivajinagar constituency today used to be Jai Mahal constituency earlier. So one is for the voters to remember that it is not Shivajinagar, it was Jai Mahal at that point. The other is also to if you have to download any of your voter lists on the 2002 voter list, then only the numbers are given. Had they given the number and the name of the polling station / part name or booth name, then maybe it would have been simpler by just juggling the memory of the voter, saying, hey, which school did you vote in, which area was it, and then look for it. But unfortunately, what they've given is only the part number. So if there are, say, 400 polling booths in a particular constituency, then you have to go through 400 lists to locate your particular booth number in 2002.
But how difficult has it been for people to find the 2002 records? Because a lot of people we know in Bangalore, I mean, I'll come to Aishwarya about what is happening in the rural areas of Karnataka, but as we know in Bangalore, a lot of people do not have a permanent address. A lot of people are shifting houses, and how is it difficult for somebody who does not have a permanent address to figure out their poll booth or a part number back in 2002?
So firstly, many of the voters don't know that they have to fill their 2002 details. Like a lot of the voters who are coming to the help desk have filled their 2025 details, even in the mapping section of it. I mean, in the mapping section of the enumeration form, they filled their 2025 details and brought it. So we are having to ask them to, put whitener and then, erase that so that we can fill that 2002 part. Now they don't know where to find it also, because not everyone can navigate website and the complicated structure of the website. You'll have to locate your, even if you have to locate your BLO name, you have to go to the citizen service portal, you have to go to search your name in the voter list and then put your voter ID number, then your booth number will come up. Then you go to the CEO Karnataka website, click on visit your, find your voter facilitation center. There you put your part number, because generally people don't remember which booth. They'll just know, government school, we go to that government school. So then to find your ERO, BLO numbers and all of that. And even if you're using your mobile app, ECI Net app, if you do search your name and voter list, which is the present details, the BLO and ERO details won't come up. So only if you have a laptop, your ERO, DEO and your BLO names and phone numbers will come up. So these are complicated things that not everybody is able to navigate, which is the reason why we are also running help desk, because I think the mapping is the most difficult part. And of course, apart from that is the filling of the enumeration forms. Now, a lot of people come and they don't remember also where they have voted. So we need to also keep asking them questions. Where did you vote? Which area were you there in? Were you married at that point? So that we know whether we have to enter their father's name or their husband's name, whether they were married in 2002 or not. And look at the, their voter ID card when it was issued. Ask them, was this the first time you got your voter ID card, or you had another voter ID earlier? If you have it, you please bring it. So people are also going to their houses, scrounging for scraps of paper. Like 2 of them yesterday had their voter slips from 2001 and 2, which really helped us to locate their names very easily.
Can you tell us about what is happening in rural areas? You were in Vijayanagara district. So what are the patterns you're seeing? How are people, able to navigate SIR forms? Like, has it been easy? What are the questions that they've had? What are the doubts? Or are they not able to fill the forms correctly?
In other districts, one thing is that if it is an area where a lot of people have don't migrate frequently, or they migrate seasonally and come back, or they wherever they are, they come back to vote, then there's their parents, their grandparents, and maybe a few generations have been there, have resided there, which means it's easier to locate the 2002 details, details from the 2002 voter rolls. However, the problem with names being extremely common, and there is a certain degree to which we have become a little comfortable with the search in the citizen service portal. But the fact of the matter is that it is extremely common, especially in low income, marginalized, low literate areas, for documents earlier to have been written by officials. So I'll say my name in my language. I will say Lakkamma. Maybe that means Lakshmamma. Maybe that means It's written to however that official hears it or understands it in English or in Kannada. So even if the same voter has resided in the same place, the name in the 2002 voter list, the spelling is different. Many places, the spelling in many places in most communities where literacy levels were low because someone else was doing it for them. So Shahnaz is Shahnaj over there. That is one thing. They're partially different names also. Some names, the way they say their names have changed, so the way their names have reflected in documents have changed. Some places they have added the name of the village to the name. It's very common. These things are, the Aadhaar card will say Harappanalli Vijayamma, but the 2002 list will say Vijayamma. It's very common for these things to happen. Some places the names have completely changed. Geeta is now Rani.
After marriage.
No, sometimes without marriage also. Because, see, in Adivasi communities, at the same point in time, one person will say one name here, one name there. In the household, he's called something. In the from wherever he works in that farm or estate, he's called something else. So sometimes they add the name of their tribe to the name, sometimes they don't. So the problem with people that people will face after this, that they will receive notices, is big. Okay, that is one thing.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Because you talked about the Adivasis. I mean, from My Vote, My Right, Karnataka and the Adivasi Sangharsh Morcha, we did a survey amongst the Paniyarava community over there. See, the Paniyarava community, they are bonded laborers in coffee estates of Kodagu. Generally, what happens, the estate owner gives some random names to the workers who are there. They say, suppose the worker is called Geeta and the estate owner has a family member also called Geeta, then because it's a very feudal society and they feel that the servant and the owner should not have the same name, the worker will be called something else. There are random names that they're called Tola, they're called Boluka, you know, whatever syllables they can, you know, join together and give them names, that's what is happening. So, and also the fact remains that the workers in coffee plantations, their documents are with the estate owners. So if the BLOs are going over there to find these voters, they're not going to find them. Their names are going to be mismatched over there. And also that because it's such a feudal society over there, and they have this bonded culture over there where the worker takes some loan from the owner, another estate owner will repay this loan as if to buy away this worker, and then they move on to another estate. So you won't even find them, you know, whoever was in a particular estate in 2002, they're not going to be in the same estate now. And they're so undocumented because their documents are also doing the rounds between estate owners and they don't have claim of their own documents. It's impossible to map them. In fact, many BLOs told Aishwarya that, you know, these workers are not going to be mapped.
So my question is, in a lot of cases, we've seen that people have messed up their forms, physical forms, and they do not have photocopies. So what do they do in such cases?
Yeah, I mean, when we started the SIR helpline, I got a call saying he collected, one of the voters in Bangalore, he collected his form, he put it in his two-wheeler's dicky, and he came home and then he found that the forms had flown away and he had no idea what to do. So we asked him to go again, request the BLO if they can print it again, or request the ERO to print it again. Yesterday also at the help desk, one of them came saying, I've lost my form. What do I do? And then, you know, the BLO who they approached asked him to go to the BBMP to ask for it. So we don't know for sure what the process is if anybody loses their enumeration forms. But in terms of filling the form incorrectly, I think people have learnt their lessons trying to apply for whatever it is, whether it is any government scheme or for any admissions or whatever. They've learnt to first take a photocopy of the application, fill it out, get it verified, and then fill it in their, you know, actual form. So most of them are doing that.
But we are advising people to use Whitener and rewrite.
Again, I have like a very simple doubt, but also I don't know how to navigate this, is my form is in Kannada. But what if I don't know how to write in Kannada, but somehow I'm able to translate what is happening? Can I fill the form in English?
Yes. So what has said this, that you can fill it in English or Kannada. Thankfully, one
solace.
one information came
So
out.
one is, see, what we've been doing is, say suppose there is a mistake in your 2002 voter list, which is generally in Kannada, but even when they're writing your name over there or your relation's name, there is a spelling mistake. We are writing as it is in Kannada, retaining the mistake. The rest of the form will be in English, but just that part will be in Kannada with the spelling mistake.
So this is like you're telling me, like before we came on camera, you were telling me about Louis will become something else.
Yeah.
Can you give examples of names that have become, and then how did you fill the form?
So, mostly in Kannada, if you look at it, it's the Talkattu, they say, which comes in between. It's a Unicode typing error or whatever. So, those are there. Sometimes the names are merged. Say Ram Krishna is there. In Kannada, you would write Rama Krishna. But that Ram Krishna, Ma and Kr will be merged with the Ottakshara and all of that. So, those are some of the things that you'll see. But of course, the names most butchered are Muslim and Christian names.
And Dalit
Dalit names, of course. So names that are not mostly mainstream, quote unquote, those are the ones with most mistakes that we've come across.
A lot of people also have this doubt if they can fill both online and offline forms. Can that be done?
However, we know maybe out of 20, maybe 1 or 2 people we know who have successfully submitted their online enumeration form. So coming to your question, once you do that, you get an acknowledgement and you don't have to fill your offline enumeration form. There is a process for verification. The BLO has to do field verification even after an online submission. Second, offline submission of enumeration form, any adult member of the household can sign the form. So that is also one thing to keep in mind, that even if you're not there, another person in your house can sign the form on your behalf, and still your vote, your whatever, your entry, your form should be submitted.
But in some instances where we've got calls on the helpline, people have asked whether they should fill their physical forms also, now that they've submitted it online, and that the BLOs or EROs are insisting that they give physical forms as well. So there are those cases as well.
This brings me with the wrong names that have been, like we know that the names are wrong in the form, and yet you're signing the undertaking. So are people worried about the repercussions?
People are definitely worried.
People are worried because the form says that it's punishable if I believe that it is not true. It is punishable under Section 31 of Representation of People Act.
The fact remains, again coming back to literacy rates, digital literacy, etc. If there were no such help desks, then people are filling it up by themselves with whatever they think is right. Now this declaration is there. How many people will actually read the declaration before signing? Madam, should we sign here? You put a cross mark there, we will sign there, and they will go submit it. So whether people can be held responsible for something they did unknowingly because the Election Commission has not given information. There is no clarity on any of the processes. What we are trying to do in the help desk is, after learning how SIR was implemented in several states in the first phase and the second phase, learning from experiences of other states and trying to formulate what can be the possible logic in this particular state. Yeah. So we are able to navigate and help voters through this entire, homework that we've been able to put into this entire process. Not everybody is going to be able to do that. Then to hold them liable that you've given false details, that is entirely on the Election Commission, I feel.
See, also there is usually the enumeration form, behind the enumeration form, there is information about the documents that you have to submit based on how old you are, if you're born before 1987 to 2004, and after 2004, all of this is written at the back. So they might claim that, we have said everything. The fact of the matter is that the manual of electoral rolls, none of these rules are, by the way, we are not coming up with these rules from any. according to the Manual of Electoral Rolls 2023, before a revision takes place, there is a certain level of advertising that needs to happen. There's a certain level of ground level, house to house, there's a awareness that needs to. There has been nothing of that sort before 29 June. After that, one video here and there, one bike rally here and there. There has been nothing from their end to ensure that voters who won't have an Instagram account or who won't, have a smartphone, are they aware that they are going to lose their right to vote and possibly their ration card, possibly their access to, now DK Shiv Kumar has said, Shakti scheme and Griha Lakshmi scheme and whatnot. So are they aware? And that's what that is what is at stake.
So, other than people who've submitted the forms, there are also sections which say they are deceased, they have shifted, they have refused to submit the forms. There is a category called others, and we want to know under what basis are people classified as others.
What is the definition? Because you just told us that there is no written communication from the ECI or the CEO of Karnataka. So is there a definition for what is others, and what are you seeing on the ground? What are the BLOs saying about who they are terming as others?
According to, like I said, around 35 conversations with booth level officials, they have not been instructed to, they have not been given any instructions or definitions about this category called others. In the BLO app, they can mark a form as uncollectible based on 5 categories. They can tick one of 5 categories: absent, already enrolled, which is duplicate, shifted, deceased, or refuse to sign enumeration form. There is no others over there. Yet we are seeing in the Chief Electoral Officer's Karnataka's daily press releases, as of last night, there were 2,980 voters marked as others. Why we are concerned, why we are demanding again and again to know the definition of others is because in May 2026, when the Supreme Court judgment came, there were 12.7 lakh voters who were marked others in SIR phase 1 and 2. The ECI ordered the names of these 12.7 lakh voters to be forwarded to the competent authority under Citizenship Act, which means, and this is also, which means what? They are suspected foreign nationals? Is that what you're saying? How did you come to these 2,980 voters in Karnataka being categorized as others? What were the criteria? Is it the same others that is being referred to there, or are you coming up with a new thing? BLOs are saying something. As per news reportage, the Chief Electoral Officer has said that it's basically people who are refusing to fill forms. Now, what does that mean? On what basis can a person refuse to fill form?
Why are they?
Why are they refusing? That is one thing. And is it the same others? Our concern is this process of linking this to citizenship. That is our main concern. Are you saying that this category of others is going to be forwarded? Because there is absolutely no transparency in how these people will have to prove that they are Indian citizens. If they are going to go under the Citizenship Act process, if they're going to be forwarded there, their names are going to be forwarded there. What is, without any legal defense, how can I protect my citizenship? That is the main question. So this is a very important question, and we have been demanding answer. In today's memorandum also, we have demanded to know what this is, what is the criteria, and how are 2,980 voters already marked? What was, on what basis were they marked?
So, I mean, we've been constantly, ever since the enumeration phase started, we've been documenting all of these things that we've also been talking about, and the most frequently asked questions by the voters also. We sent a memorandum also to the CEO Karnataka. Yet again, there's complete silence on his part, and we don't know how to navigate this. And just like that, even in terms of this others thing, I mean, a written clarification would help. And if there are mistakes which the voters could correct to not be part of that others, then that gives an opportunity to the voters to, rectify whatever mistakes are happening. And I think this is essentially they're being deliberately opaque about this process, just so that, you know, voters are left to the mercies of their own logics and thinking.
So far through this conversation, we've established that things have changed, the constituencies have changed, people's addresses have changed. So, my question is that the area that I went to yesterday in Pulakeshi Nagar, a lot of the smaller homes have been torn down and big buildings, apartments have come up. So, it's not like the BLOs can ask the neighbors or anyone where these people have gone. So, in such cases where people probably do not know which constituency they voted in 2002, where they've shifted and BLOs cannot locate, what do these people do?
You want to take it?
See, there are two ways to answer this. One is what do the guidelines say, what does the law say, and the second thing is what we have seen that has happened on the ground and in other states. According to the law, they need to give a notice. After 15 days of no reply to that notice, they need to conduct a quasi-judicial inquiry and then establish that the person is shifted out of that residence. That is the only way that you can mark a person as shifted. SIR is, of course, diluted and, really made most of these rules almost meaningless by giving extraordinary discretionary power to EROs. That is one thing. That's the law and the guideline. On the other hand, we have seen, let's say in Uttar Pradesh, a slum where 12,000 people were staying that were demolished. That case went to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ordered rehabilitation. So in 2002, they lived in that slum that was demolished, but now they have, BLOs are saying these 12 or 13 booths, we can't help you. We just can't help you because your address no longer exists. So you are shifted. So the people who are obviously going to be most vulnerable are people who have lost their residence to this kind of state-led demolition. This is done by the state or whatever private landholders who, in collusion with state authorities, will undertake this kind of bulldozing thing. Migrant workers who, especially in urban and semi-urban areas, they're not owners of property. They will not be living in the same house for 25, 30 years. And therefore, they would have moved out or their residence no longer exists. And with the kind of land acquisition that we see, it's not our prestige building that gets demolished to build a mall. They are slums, they are land, these are lands that in which extremely poor communities reside. So these are going to be people vulnerable to this particular question you have asked. And honestly, there's no real clear answer except the fact that after 5th August, we need to be extra vigilant. If their name has been excluded, they might not even receive a notice. They might receive a notice. We have to file claims and try and ensure that they are included. That is all the information that we have.
There's also one more scenario that my colleague in Hyderabad and also we came across in some of the neighborhoods in Bangalore is what if you have two spouses, especially if you're a woman and you have two husbands, like for divorce or death of a spouse and you remarry again. And in 2002, your husband name in your document was different and now it's different. So how do you fill the form? Who will be your relative in that case? And that is one layer. Another layer is if you have had a child with the first husband, then how do you navigate the form? Third layer is what you have if you have child with like both the husbands at this point. Can you guys help figure out how to fill the form in such scenario?
One is, like I said earlier, to retain whatever is mentioned in the 2002 voter list, retain that detail. So if it is a woman that we're talking about, then her, whatever details was there in the 2002 list, if she was an eligible voter at that time, that is retained. In regards to the child, whatever is on their document, who's mentioned as the father, whether it is the first husband or the second husband, their details have to be mentioned. But this is not something which is limited to, say, a woman who's married 2 times or, restricted to women who are married multiple times. I think it is also reflective of people who say, for example, have had intercaste marriages, inter-religious marriages, trans persons who have changed their gender or sex after 2002, who are much older right now. So I think the discrepancy comes in regards to all of these categories of people. People who have changed their names also for whatever legal reasons. Married women also included, because when they are at their parental home, they're called a particular name. When they're married, their names generally get changed after getting married. So these are realities of our Indian society that the Election Commission should have taken into account for. Like even some of the cases of logical discrepancies in West Bengal that we came across. And the classic example of Amartya Sen, who was deleted from the draft list because received a notice for the age between his mother and him being less than 15 years, which constitutes logical discrepancy. The fact was that he is in his 90s, and when he was born, it was 100 years ago. At that time, the Indian reality was that there was child marriage in our country, and women had children right after they hit puberty, and they got married and they started having children. So why is that not part of the processes right now? But I also think, see, the point of saying, okay, whatever it is, you submit your forms, even if you don't fill your mapping details, even if it is wrong details, change details, discrepancies, etc. And then a notice will come. After all, you have to give a document. I think that's a very irresponsible statement to also make. Because if you don't file your enumeration form with correct details and you're going to receive a notice, it is an increased risk of deletion. You are putting a voter at peril of deletion. You are risking their right to vote. So being in a position of authority over lakhs of people, over crores of people, and to say, hey, it's just a notice, yeah, you just reply. People don't have the bandwidth to negotiate these processes. It's very irresponsible.
When we went to meet BLOs yesterday, we were also told that almost halfway into the SIR exercise, they have now been given forms which require family members of people who have died to give 5 signatures of witnesses saying the person has died, and I think shifted as well. What can you tell us about these forms? Do we require 5 signatures?
See, like I said, according to the guidelines, this is not just for people who have died. This is for people who need to be marked under ASDD, right? Absent, shifted, duplicate, or dead. So, according to the guidelines, there needs to be an inquiry. Unfortunately, this is also the first time we're seeing a copy of the process, because they've not made any of this transparent. And it's there. It says Thala Mahazar, means it's a spot. It's a type of inquiry. So this is what the guideline says, that there needs to be an inquiry, and this could be a part of that inquiry. Now, whether it requires 5 witnesses, because it requires their name, address, and signature, that means they're testifying to another voter. What is going to be done to ensure the credibility of this like it's a testimony, right? That I can assure that this person has shifted or is dead. I don't know, but this looks like it's a part of that process of inquiry. But we want to know more. We will ask around too.
2 things. I mean, upon looking at this, of course, we've come across this when help desks were set up, but we didn't. The thing is that BLOs have also been giving different instructions. One BLO said you just have to give a death certificate and we'll mark them as dead and you don't have to worry about that. With the other 3, absent, shifted, and duplicate voters, they themselves are marking on the voter list or whatever, not giving the form and saying, okay, we'll mark them as such, and they're not doing this spot Mahazar as has been given in this format. One is, if whatever it be the process, if they're claiming that a voter has passed away and they're furnishing the death certificate provided by a competent authority of the state, isn't that sufficient document to say that this person has died? Why do they need 5 additional signatures of witnesses to say that no, this person has actually died? Who are going to be these, witnesses? Are they going to be family members, neighbors, the police? Who will, ascertain that yes, this person has actually passed away? Thirdly, the BLO has to attest to this. There is a provision for the BLO to put their signature after the details are filled out in this form. How much more should the BLOs do?
So lastly, I want to understand, we did speak about married women, queer people, trans women, trans women, trans men, they are having issues with navigating the form because most often they do not talk to their parents anymore, also in cases of interfaith marriages, right? Like I came across people who were telling that their parents are not giving them any document details of themselves from 2002. So have you come across people who fit this criteria, and how have you helped them navigate the form if they do not have details of their parents?
So initially, even before the SIR began, we did a survey among the transgender communities. Multiple trans communities, community groups, got their members to fill out these forms. We filed a complaint with the CEO saying these are the requirements. They have the trans ID cards, which requires them to have a sworn affidavit before the magistrate. The state government is giving them this trans ID card. So you use that as a valid document as part of this SIR process and don't ask them to bring all these out. The response of the CEO was that they can visit the voter facilitation centers if their parents are not cooperating. But right now, that is not the reality. Voter facilitation centers are not helping any voters, let alone trans voters who are there. In UP, we saw, civil society organizations told us that where the population of trans community in a particular area was about 140,000 voters, post SIR, it has come down to 4,000 voters. So this is a risk even in Karnataka. So it entirely depends upon, how we try to navigate each of the voters. They are at risk of deletion. We're trying at best to ensure that most details are available and we are able to do it. There are also cases where orphans are there, where families have abandoned children also, and fathers refusing to give their voter ID details as well. And best we can do is try to juggle memories of people, try and get in touch with relatives who you may be in talking terms with, try and get some information so that we do a deeper search for the mapping details and all that. So it is basically circumventing the process and trying to accommodate voters into this structure rather than the process itself trying to be more accommodative of all these, exclusive situations.
As we have heard, the biggest challenge the citizens are facing today is not just filling the forms. It's understanding what is being asked of them and knowing what steps need to be taken in case they face difficulties. Now, if you are filling SIR forms, make sure you go through each part carefully. Take copies of the documents and the forms that you're submitting. And even then, if you have any doubts, go reach out to the authorized official or groups like My Vote, My Right.
Activists such as Aishwarya and Lekha are doing the very painstaking but important work of making sure voters do not lose their rights. You can also be a part of this exercise and volunteer at My Vote, My Right. We hope this conversation helped you better understand the SIR process. At TNM, we bring conversations that help you make sense of the issues affecting your everyday life. If you value our work, do subscribe to the News Minute.